Welcome back to everybody that was here this morning, and welcome to a few new faces who have joined us in person and also online. So because of that, I'll reintroduce myself, but I'll also do so in a way that Dougie kicked us off on one of the panel sessions prior to the break, which I should probably have done this morning, which is describing what you're wearing. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't do that, I'm not quite sure. So I'm Graham Johnson. I'm the CEO of the Donaldson Group's retail and distribution business. How do I describe myself? A kind of slightly follically challenged middle-aged guy wearing a camo green kilt, some trainery boots, a black jacket, but also I've got a t-shirt here which has got a QR code on it, right? And the QR code says, so the words on the top say act now, and the QR code takes you to a landing page. So if you can scan the QR code, try and do it. If it works. Some people have got it to work. If you can't scan the QR codes, the website we're looking for you to go to is sta.ngo/act now. And obviously, the theme of today was to come ready to listen, leave ready to act. And for those of you that are not already part of this great movement, we're looking for anybody to get involved at any part of the ecosystem, and we're looking for just this event to continue to kick on this great movement that's been started and continues to evolve at a rate of knots. So talking about the ecosystem, there's two people I'm going to introduce who don't actually need any introduction at all, because I'm sure everybody knows who they are. Kirsty and Alistair, please welcome them to the stage.
We're not going to sit down.
No, absolutely. Okay, well, so you've heard a bit from me already, but the session we're going to go through just now is to introduce the next set of breakout sessions. So there are three topics that we think are really fundamental to the ability to scale the work that we're all doing through the Tech for Good Alliance and the Tech Army, because doing a lot of work and not structuring it in a way that can be reused and scaled is missing a tremendous opportunity. And so the three topics we're going to be covering in the breakouts, one is the creation of an independent open source solutions repository for the third sector. The second is our ideas around a volunteer recognition framework for all the people who give their time and talents. And the third is the topic of impact measurement, which for those of you who have a background in the third sector and potentially elsewhere you'll know why we've called that session the perennial challenge. But in each of those sessions, we've got a really fascinating mix of people who are going to explore some of those issues, and there'll be an opportunity for a bit of Q&A with the audience as well. But we just wanted to take 5 minutes or so on each of those topics, just to kind of frame these for you in terms of how we see them fitting into the overall bigger picture. So to start off with, the first of those is the idea around how do we capture and make available and reuse the solutions that are created by the work that all of these skilled volunteers do. So part of the thinking of this came about because we have had contact with a number of organizations that have got really well-developed, impressive, well-funded Tech for Good programs within their own organizations, including JP Morgan, their new building over there, Morgan Stanley, who are represented in the room, and a number of the big tech companies. We had a representative of Cisco, UK and Ireland last year. We have a lot of contacts with Microsoft. All these companies have got really big programs that they invest in to create solutions for creating social impact. Of necessity, those programs are structured in such a way that the company recruits a cohort, usually of charities that they want to work with. They agree what they're going to work on, what they're going to deliver. They do the work and they hand it over. So they've created the value, they've delivered it to the organization that's requested it. But for obvious reasons, they can't commit to maintaining that forever, because otherwise they're just going to have an ever-increasing maintenance burden for stuff that they've built for nothing, and it just doesn't stack up. It's always been our intention within the Tech for Good Alliance that all of the work that gets done is being done on the basis that it's going to be open sourced, so it can be reused. And so creating a mechanism and a framework for capturing all of that work and being able to reuse it is a fundamental part of this platform, as we call it. So that's the intention going forward. with the work from through the Tech for Good Alliance, but we've also been having some really interesting conversations, and this will be covered in the topic, in the discussion we're going to have in the breakout. If you look at all these organizations that have already done all this great work, how about we try and harvest some of that into this repository? And by creating it as something that's independent and it's not associated with any one of those companies, the idea is that it makes it easier for those companies to contribute, because with the best will in the world, JP Morgan is probably going to be a bit reticent about contributing code into a repository that's managed by JP Morgan. So that independence we think is really important, but also simply putting stuff in a repository is not enough to be able to ensure it's going to be reused, especially if you're looking at organizations that are using this that do not themselves necessarily have that tech talent within their organizations. So, there are a number of repositories that are out there. There's a UN-backed initiative, the Digital Public Goods Alliance, and there are some fascinating, fantastic solutions in there. But for third sector organizations, for most of them, the barrier to entry is just too high. So that's why, as part of this, what we're looking to do is to create the surrounding framework that both makes it more accessible and also provides the support to implementation of that. So looking to gather from a number of different sources, the Tech for Good Alliance, these corporates that have these programs, in order to populate the repository. We also see a really important role for the funders in this. So many charities, when they're trying to implement some bit of technology, they'll go for some funding from a funder to be able to do that. And unfortunately, what tends to happen is that all happens one by one. So one organization will apply for a grant for one solution, which then gets implemented. But it may well be that another organization is applying to another funder for more or less the same thing. So there's an inefficiency in that. So the idea in talking with the funding community is to say to them, how about you write into your grant award letters that everything that gets built through this funding must be made available as open source. So that's necessary but not sufficient. Doesn't do us any good if we don't know about it. So that's where what Fawzia Irfan talked about this morning, 360 Giving, the platform that they've created, gives us a really interesting model about how do we get the funders to contribute that information into a single place so that we can all see it, we can do something about it, and we can start to promote it. Because again, if you look at whether it's done by a corporate or through a commercial contract, work that gets delivered to a charity, it's not that charity's job, and that charity does not have the time to go out and suggest to other charities, why don't you use this thing that we've had built? They're using it. They're focusing on their mission. They're delivering this to their beneficiaries. So that's why we think this needs a much more comprehensive framework and a set of terms of reference around this. So that's the kind of thing that we're going to be talking about in the first of those breakout sessions. Second one is something that we call the volunteer recognition framework. So, Kirsty.
Thank you. Any of you who were here last year would have heard us, originally field the concept of a volunteer recognition framework. One of the challenges that we have is that the only thing that we can really do for our volunteers at the moment is to say thank you, maybe do a case study video and put out some social media. Beyond that, there really isn't a framework around which we can actually truly certify, if you like, the fact that a volunteer stepped forward and gave their time and their skills and their expertise for the benefit of others. So the volunteer recognition framework is slightly complicated, but it is designed to reflect everything that you brought to the table when you came to volunteer. So were you in a leadership role? What skills did you bring? How much expertise did you bring? If you were learning something new, did you hand it over well? What was your QA like and things like that? And the idea is to develop a model and a framework around which we can provide that accreditation, if you like, so that it's effectively a badging system so that volunteers, be they independent or part of an organization, can be credited formally for the contributions that they have made. So part of the, I suppose, the challenge here is if you're trying to break into the tech sector and you don't have much experience, it's very, very difficult to evidence what you've done or what you can bring and how good you might be if somebody would just give you a chance. Whereas actually, if you've come into something like the Scottish Tech Army and you've volunteered your time and as a consequence of that, you have gained experience and things, that's something that you can evidence. It's stuff you can put on your CV. But if actually you could go to LinkedIn and say, here's my stamp, here's my confirmation, here's my evidence that I have actually done this. We know that through organisations like IBM, Sharon's here with us today from IBM, they have an amazing accreditation program within IBM, and it's a global program, and it means a lot to their employees, and it means a lot to the organisation, and it means a lot to their stakeholders. But if you're an SME or a small company that has 100, 200 employees, your internal accreditation system is great internally, but it doesn't really tell anybody anything outside of that. And actually being able to be part of a framework where you can aggregate the contribution of the volunteers who you allow to volunteer through your CSR programs to take effectively credit, saying we have developed this talent and they are giving of their time and their skills, and allow the organisation to be credited, if you like, for having made that possible as well. And ultimately what we want to be able to do in the impact challenge is the challenge that we have is that if you have, as part of this contribution, contributed to that Tech for Good repository, and that solution is being used time and time and time again, how do you credit the 4 people who built it with that continued expansion and reuse? So it's a way of trying to draw all of this together. So don't have all of the answers. We've got lots of the ideas. And in our session this afternoon, we really want to hear your views on what you think the challenges are around that. I'm delighted that Aileen Hamilton from CERC is here with us today as part of the STEM Ambassadors Programme. Everybody knows what STEM ambassadors are. You've probably, amongst yourselves, probably got a few badges yourselves. It's the value of that accreditation. It's a way of making you feel valued. It's a way of people remembering that you did a good thing. So that is what the Volunteer Recognition Framework is.
Good stuff. Thank you. And then the final topic is that around impact measurement. And as I say, this is something that is much debated, and it's a really knotty problem. We were having the briefing call about this a few days ago, and absolutely fascinating conversation. I'm chairing one of the other ones, so I can't be in it, but I'm really looking forward to being able to watch it back afterwards, because there is no simple answer to this problem, and it spans everything from are we measuring the right things, to how are we measuring them, to how are we trying to achieve consistency. And so we've got on that panel a group of people who have got a really diverse range of views on that, which is going to be really stimulating. And I said to everybody at the end of the call, there's nothing worse on a panel than people saying, yeah, I agree with her or him all the time. You actually want a bit of debate. So we're going to get that, I promise you. This is an area that we've had some really fascinating discussions around. There are some really interesting initiatives that are already underway, including some that are being led by the people who are going to be on the panel. So certainly not something, again, like the Volunteer Recognition Framework, that we're expecting there to be any easy answers, but we think it's another of these really important underpinning elements of the Tech for Good Alliance, because you need to have that level of transparency and consistency if you're going to have an effective ecosystem. So that's probably about number 8 of ecosystem, so I'm keeping my quota up. But it's essential to an ecosystem that people can talk about things on the same terms and they can interact in a transparent and a consistent way. So that's the kind of overarching theme, if you like, of the 3 sessions that we're going to go into now.